ignoring this. We run some ads. Hey everybody, it's Erik J. Olson once again for your Lunchtime Live. Today I have a friend of a friend on, Katherine Prescott from Brew.
Hey everyone.
So we actually got connected by a mutual friend, Daniel Hill of Daniel Hill Media, who does the Instagram stories. And, Katherine, he has mentioned you quite a few times in the last year and a half that I've known you. He's like, oh, Erik, you got to meet Katherine sometime. She's done some amazing things with her newsletter. So why don't you kind of give us a brief summary of what you do and maybe why Daniel's bragging about you?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Erik, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really excited to be here. And clearly, I am very fortunate to have Daniel in my corner. He is so impressive, and I'm so grateful for all of his support. So if you're listening, Daniel, thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about Brew. And also, I'd love to share just how I kind of initially got it off the ground. So today, Brew is the #1 newsletter for Alexa enthusiasts. We send 50,000 Alexa super user email subscribers one awesome thing to try every day with Alexa. And so this is a daily email newsletter. And our mission is really to help people get more out of Alexa.
Yeah.
And this kind of brings me to why I started Brew in January of 2019. So I had, always been a really big fan of Alexa. I had Echoes around my apartment, and I really relied on Alexa for lots of different kinds of use cases. And I had friends too who were using Alexa. Some of them would get Alexa, they'd use her to play music or set timers and things like that. But they never kind of broke through to anything else beyond that. There was no smart home. There was no, let alone using, any third-party Alexa skill or some of the cool features like routines and lists and reminders and just things that for me had become kind of such an integral part of my everyday life. And I also saw a lot of my friends who would get Echoes, and the novelty of being able to use your voice to turn on music and stuff was really cool. But they also already had a Sonos setup, and they could play music through their iPhones, and eventually the novelty would kind of wear off, and the Echoes would kind of be relegated to the corner and unplugged for another iPhone charger. And so I was thinking to myself, you know what? I think that there might be a space for really high quality content for just regular down the middle, non-techie people, really user-centric content. And it turns out that there was, I just felt like people really were not getting the most out of this amazing voice technology, and that I just started writing some content, and it really kind of took hold. And I'd be happy to share kind of how I first started distributing it as well, if you'd like to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Alexa and the Echo, it sounds like inside and out. We can go down that rabbit hole, but what I find most interesting, frankly, and I think that the audience is going to find most interesting, is not necessarily how to tweak your Alexa per se. They could sign up for voicebrew.com's newsletter for that. But, we have a lot of marketers on, and 50,000 email subscribers in a year and a half. And you probably, I'd love to hear how it grew over time, but that's incredible. I mean, if we get a handful of email newsletters on my newsletter, my company's newsletter a week, I'm thrilled. You have 50,000 subscribers. You told me beforehand that you have about 10,000 opens a day. That's an incredible number of impressions. So let's talk about the target audience. You said your normal kind of Alexa owner. Did you focus in? I'm guessing you focused in on that because number one, it's a big audience, but number two, because everyone else was targeting the super high end, nerdy geek kind of people. Is that why?
Exactly. Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So you identified your audience, you identified their pain point.
Hmm.
What made you start sending, like, why did you think, oh, an email newsletter? There's a lot of different ways you could send this message. Why email?
So they're right. There are a lot of different ways that you can send out your message. Email is, I would, I think that if you want to have a direct relationship with your with your subscribers or with your audience without any intermediary, email is the best way to reach them. So for example, if you have 1 million Instagram followers, obviously that is an incredible achievement. But one day, Instagram might just completely change their algorithm.
That's right.
And you might 50% of your followers might just stop seeing the content that you're posting. So it was really important to me if I was going to invest time in building an audience, like I wanted to have a direct relationship with my audience. I didn't want anybody in the middle.
Gotcha. That's awesome. All right. So we are going to do a deep dive into that. All right. I have a bunch of questions off to the side here that I'm going to be like rattling off. But if you have a question, you can put your question into our Facebook Live. And this is broadcast on a lot of different platforms. So if you're not on our Facebook, go to facebook.com/thisisarray/live. Enter your comment there, and then we can ask Katherine your question in the next 24 minutes. All right. So yeah, let's talk about, like, all right, you have the idea. You're like, all right, I know who my audience is. I know their pain point. I know how I'm going to deliver the message. What do you do to kind of like initially jumpstart that whole community?
So, another point I want to make here is that you can have an amazing product, you can have a great idea for something. If you don't have a good distribution strategy, it doesn't really matter. Especially if you're trying to reach consumers, which Voice Brew is. And so when I thought about launching Voice Brew, one of my sort of key hypotheses was that, when I was trying to learn to use these new Alexa features, I was Googling for things like Alexa routines or Alexa shopping lists. And I wasn't finding any really helpful guides to like how to do these things. The CNETs of the world and the Tom's guides, and other sites like that were creating really good content for more technologically sophisticated people. And just like to level set, like I am not a super techie person, which is part of the reason why I think I'm able to write content for other non-techie people. And so I thought that I had a really good shot at winning like SEO search terms, like Alexa routine and Alexa shopping list and Alexa games and setting up your smart lights and all these, different things, changing the wake word, like lots of stuff that you can do that I could see that people were searching for more in Google Trends, but also just my own insights from using this technology so much. Like I could see what features were getting better and better. And that led me to believe that other people would start to realize that too, and that the search activity for some of those terms and features would start to creep up.
Yeah.
So I believed that I could write the best feature guides for a lot of these features. Alexa, I keep coming back to Alexa routines because that's a big one I've focused on, and that I could drive a lot of traffic to those different posts and that I could capture emails from that traffic. So that was part of my kind of distribution hypothesis and why I felt like I had a real shot at scaling Voice Brew to be a large audience.
You've done amazing things for sure, but is your background in SEO and marketing?
No.
So that's incredible because you had great confidence that you could pull this off, having, I assume, never done something like this before, but you had the passion, which made it happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, it's been a while now, but there is so many great posts and books and things out there that I was reading to sort of help get this off the ground. I would say that one of the kind of best ways to start getting some credibility with an SEO strategy. So when I first started when you put up a website, so for me, it was voicebrew.com, you start with like zero credibility from Google's search
Yeah.
algorithm, right? So how do you start building that from scratch? It really is true that if you write the best content and it's, comprehensive, and it's really useful and it's better than what's out there, like you have a really good shot at eventually climbing up the SEO ranks. But of course, how do you get people to initially discover that content? So this is what I did. Well, first of all, I started kind of linking to it in my emails, and I'm not sure how much that actually helped from an SEO standpoint. Maybe kind of on the margin, I started driving a little bit of traffic.
Sure.
But what really moved the needle is I started writing a bunch of guest posts for different news outlets. Like I did that for lots of news outlets, but including Business Insider, NBC, NBC's website. And the way that what I would do in those guest posts is I would include, so for like Alexa routine, like that was one where I thought, like, I know I have the best Alexa routine post. It's really long. Like it should be the number one result. And I can write a million guest posts where I talk about different Alexa routines, and I link the words Alexa routine in the guest post on Business Insider back to my Voice Brew Alexa routine post, so that Google sees that and they see, oh, this credible source, Business Insider, is showing that the Voice Brew Alexa routine post is reputable. And so I started writing as many guest posts as I could. The way that I got these posts, first of all, like I really worked my network. It's hard. These editors at these news sites are getting tons of pitches every day. I made really sure that when I did pitch something, that it was in the exact format that like these sort of like, the articles would be in. So for example, for Business Insider, I initially pitched them 5 surprisingly helpful ways to use Alexa. And what I sent them had, they have the 2 bullets at the top of every one. So I had the 2 bullets.
You made it easy for them.
They have an image, and then they have a short little thing, and then they have another image for number 2. So I included all the images. They were all images that I, had like licensed, or that I knew were free, or that I, owned myself because I had taken the photographs or whatever. But I sent them something that was literally just like plug and play. And I think that's surprisingly really unusual because most people don't do that work. But in addition to that, every entrepreneur that's trying to build an audience based on SEO, should sign up for Harrow. Are you familiar with Harrow?
Help a reporter out.
You'll get, depending on how many of their lists you sign up for, you'll get, reporters who are looking for sources for different stories that they're writing. They post the stories on Harrow, and then you get to look at all of the stories that are being posted. And whenever I see something that's related to voice technology or Alexa, I always get in touch with that reporter. And again, I don't get in touch with the reporter and just say, oh, hey, I'm Katherine, you can call me and here's my number. I give them like quotes so that they can literally copy and paste the quotes into the email. So, I really kind of do their work for them. So I just talked for a while. So I'm going to.
Yeah, I think it's great. And so like, actually, I want to kind of recap because you dropped a lot of like really good nuggets there. So like, one is, Harrow, right? Help a reporter out, right? That will get you, and I've done it before. It's not like you send out a pitch and they pick you up immediately. It's like you have to try. So there's effort there, but you can find out what reporters are looking for someone like you to comment on or for one of their articles. So that's a great way to get links back to your website, right? So you have to have good content on your website to begin with. So we're talking about a website, we're talking about SEO strategy. And then also like with the reporters, make it easy, right? So like Katherine, you were just saying like you gave them the title, you gave them the bullet points, you gave them the image, you gave them everything. So instead of being like, hey, I could write an article or it's something that you need if you want, you gave it to them. You're like, here, it's prepackaged, ready to go. Exactly. Even with a hyperlink back to your website. It's awesome.
So I would hyperlink all over, and I was kind of delightfully surprised that they kept my links because I wondered. I was like, I wonder if they're going to pull these
Right.
out. They left them in, and I think some of it is, these editors understand that it's really helpful when they include your backlinks, and
They appreciate it. Yeah.
they kind of get that.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to make sure I really touch on, though, in addition to this, you rank for a bunch, as many search terms as you can, and for me, I also knew like Alexa routine, Alexa shopping list. These were not search terms that were particularly competitive. And there are different ways that you can figure out if a search term is competitive. There are like SEO tools like SEMrush and
Yep.
stuff like that. I didn't want to pay for any of that stuff. So I would just Google the search terms and see what came up and just evaluate whether I thought the content was good or not.
Yeah.
And I largely didn't think it was that good for just like the regular kind of non-techie people. So I picked search terms that I felt like were not that competitive. So you bring people to your site who are searching for those terms. You kind of cross your fingers and hope that you're right, that more and more people are going to search for those terms. But then when they get to your site, how do you actually get them to sign up? And there are kind of two things here. One is like you've got to have like a nice like email pop-up that comes up.
Oh, are these the ones that no one really likes, the pop-ups, the modals?
Yeah, but they're very
They're
effective.
effective.
But like here's an example of something like you don't want to take things too far. So for example, I A/B tested one pop-up that had like a very clear X and
Mhm.
one pop-up that didn't have an X. So like you could just like click outside of it and it would
Yeah.
close, but it wasn't obvious. And what I found was that I started getting people were so annoyed at getting this pop-up that they couldn't click out of, but they really wanted to see the content behind it. So I was just getting infinite junk
Yeah.
emails that people were typing in, and some of
Right.
them
Like, I
had
hate you at
appropriate
I hate you.com.
yeah, some of them I will not say because I don't think they're appropriate to be aired. But I started seeing all that and thinking, like I was looking at I use Opt-in Monster as my pop-up tool, and I was looking at like the yield was like amazing on this no X pop-up. But then I was actually looking at the emails that were coming in, and the quality of the emails, like so many of them were just getting cleaned off the list because they were so obviously fake emails. So you want, like, as an entrepreneur, like you always want to kind of test the waters and push things, but you also have to be careful that you're not being so aggressive that it's actually
Yeah.
counterproductive.
And then when you notice a pattern like you do, correct it, right? Like everybody makes mistakes. Just correct your mistakes, and you end up doing it the right way
And
after a
it's
while.
good to make mistakes because, yeah, I mean, with the pop-up initially, I was like, in my mind, I'm like, people hate pop-ups. Like, I don't want to have a website with a pop-up. Like, I'm just going to have I'm on every Voice Brew page. There's a, on the right side of the page, very prominent, the call to action to sign up. But everything I was reading about, how do you actually capture, emails for people who are coming to your site, everybody said, you got to have a pop-up, you got to have a pop-up, you got to have a pop-up. And so I tried it. And when I look at the difference between the number of people that just sign up who don't get a pop-up versus
Mhm.
people who are the percentage of people signing up who get the pop-up, it's just, I would have missed out on like thousands
That's
of
crazy.
really good,
Wow.
high quality subscribers
I,
without a pop-up.
I would not have guessed that. That's really insightful. What about like have you tested whether you pop it up like immediately, you wait for 5 seconds, you wait till they scroll to a certain point? Have you done anything like that?
I haven't done those types of tests, but it's certainly something I should.
Yeah, I see different techniques on different websites, and I'm always like, oh, I wonder, like, if that's helping them. And sometimes you think it must be because otherwise, why would they do it? But maybe I think a lot of people just do stuff and they don't really know if it's useful or not. So that's
Yeah.
super interesting that you've looked at like the number, like the people that have signed up through that pop up, how long they stay on the list versus the people that sign up organically.
And just
Without.
the percentage, like the yield, the people who are landing on a web page where like there is no pop-up that's coming up, versus people who are actually getting a pop-up.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
of course, not everybody who gets the pop-up actually is going to sign up. A lot of them, most people just click out of it.
Yeah.
But that's
So,
something that was surprising. That was surprising to me. And also just on the call to action piece, we talked a little bit about this, before we started the show. If you look at, voicebrew.com, so like a lot of, people who are on VoiceBrew's website who are looking at a post, they'll often click to the homepage because, they've never heard of VoiceBrew, they're curious what it is, or word of mouth. People just go to like Google VoiceBrew and land on the homepage. VoiceBrew's homepage there is one thing you can do on VoiceBrew's homepage. You can sign up for VoiceBrew's newsletter. And I am so surprised at how many signups I get from that voicebrew.com news page every day.
wow.
That is, again, something like if you really want people to, if you're using your website to drive newsletter signups, that's the purpose of VoiceBrew's website. It's to feed subscribers into the newsletter. And in order to do that, we publish really high quality content there. But the ultimate goal is to get subscribers. You want to really, really optimize your website for that.
That's awesome.
Your goal is to create a standalone website that just has like amazing news articles and stuff like that. Of course, you want the homepage to have lots of that content.
Yeah.
But you just have to be clear on what your goal is.
Well, I love that. All right, we have a couple of comments here from Facebook. So one is from Kevin Daisy, who's the co-founder and my business partner of Array Digital. He says, one day I will say, Katherine, what is the weather today? So you're taking over Alexa. And then the second is from Julian. He says, greetings from the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Coastal Virginia. Thanks for this great information. So I agree with him. This is I'm getting a lot of great tips here because I got a lot of ideas and I'm going to be implementing a lot of these things that you're kind of like putting in my head right now very, very soon. So if you have a question, if you have a specific question for Katherine, or you just want to like say hi, go to our Facebook Live and type it in the comments there. We got another 8 minutes until we shut this down, but I've got a few more questions for you.
Okay.
All right. So daily emails, that cannot be easy. I mean, that's got to become at some point kind of like a job. Like how do you go about, like, did you start off daily? How do you get motivated? Like, how do you come up with the content for daily?
Everybody asks me this question when I talk about VoiceBrew. So when I first started pushing out content for VoiceBrew, I actually should have mentioned this earlier. I initially started posting it on Reddit in the Amazon Echo and Alexa subreddits. And people on Reddit they're like Alexa, like super expert fanatic types. And so the email newsletter that was weekly that I was publishing initially for VoiceBrew was catering to those people. It was every email, they were like long and comprehensive. Like I read an email that was like how to get the news on Alexa. And it was like literally like how to listen to the radio, how to use flash briefings, what you can watch live. It was like everything. And this audience, they were so excited to get this like extremely comprehensive, these super comprehensive newsletters. But as the newsletter started to grow beyond the first, say, like 1,000 people who largely were joining from Reddit, the people who were on the list were not these sort of Alexa fanatic, like super experts. They were just regular people that were searching for stuff on Google and that were starting to land on my different feature guides and, pages as I was picking up some SEO credibility. And as the audience started to shift, I actually started to see a drop off in engagement from these super detailed weekly emails. And I also just started hearing feedback from subscribers and also just quite frankly, like from friends, that it was like starting to feel a little bit like a chore to read them, or they would save them for later and then they wouldn't read them. And so I started thinking like, okay, more deeply about like how do I define success for my email? And like my mission is helping people get more out of Alexa. And so success is if people actually do the thing that I recommend.
Yeah.
And if you really want people to do something, give them something really narrow that's just one bite-sized chunk of something to do and make it really user-centric. And so that was one reason to start going to a daily email, is that instead of having these long weekly emails, I just started feeling like, given the way the audience had evolved, that it just made more sense to do something that was more frequent but shorter and more bite-sized. But I also felt like, in order to get people, really engaged in opening my email, all of the emails, I wanted to build a habit. And when you do something on a weekly basis, it's hard to build a habit. Whereas when you start sending something daily, you can actually build that habit. So that was another reason why I felt like the move from weekly to daily made a lot of sense.
And by daily, are we talking 7 days a week?
No, I call it daily, but it's
Yeah.
really only 4 days a week. So
4 days.
I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So not kind of, I leave people alone over the
Give them a
weekend.
break.
And it's turned out to be a really good cadence because it's frequent enough, and it's like 4 successive days, so it builds a habit, but it doesn't overwhelm people.
Yeah.
And I see with every email that I send, the open rate ticks up over like the 2 to 3 weeks following that email. So I know a lot of people are kind of catching up, or they're reading them the weekend or the next weekend. And I think if I sent something every single day, it would be kind of like this pylon of stuff to try. So you also, different frequency is right for different businesses.
I like that a lot.
But this is what made sense for Voice Brew.
So a couple comments here. One is Sean Burke. This is a great cadence, the 4 days a week. This strategy is great. I agree. I like that a lot. I think that's really, really nice. It's not overwhelming. And like you said, you just kind of give people a little bit of a break, and then you pick it up again during when they're kind of focused during the first half of the week, if you will. And then the second is from our mutual friend, Daniel Hill. He says, Reddit people are a special breed for sure. And I totally agree.
Well said, Daniel.
It's kind of like my Twitter people. There's some interesting ones out there. And that's kind of my reason for going there. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, so let me ask, you send out this daily email 4 days a week. Is it like the complete guide, or is it kind of like a teaser and then they click over to your website to fill in the blanks?
So I try to keep the emails like pretty contained, so you don't have to click around and do a bunch of stuff. I want people to just be able to look at the email, get what they need to get out of it. From time to time, if I'm writing, for example, about an Alexa routine, I might link over to my Alexa routine post, but often I'll include whatever the steps are for the specific routine that I'm talking about. So, for example, I recently wrote an email newsletter about, creating an Alexa routine that's kind of like a checklist for the things that you need before you leave the house during COVID. So like, don't forget your mask, don't forget your hand sanitizer, and then like, don't forget to turn the lights off, those types of things.
Yeah.
And that's a really, like, that's the whole newsletter. It's really basic. It's really simple. And I'll have sort of a subsection at the top that just describes it's kind of like I describe how I use this routine in my life and why it's useful to me. And then I have a second subsection below that's kind of how to set the routine up. But it's simple. Setting something like this up takes 30 seconds. So I want to include it in the email, because as soon as you're asking people to click over to something else, you're losing a lot of them.
Do you take that email content and publish it at the same time or later or before on your website?
I usually publish it like a little bit later, kind of just like roughly like on the same day. Honestly, I should have kind of a better system for publishing everything kind of as emails go out.
But it's interesting because
yeah.
I think what's interesting about that is a lot of blogs, like they're positioned as blogs, and you kind of have to go to the blog to find out what's new, or there's like an RSS feed. But it sounds like, since you're providing the same information in newsletter and your website, like you do have a blog for sure, and you have an SEO strategy, but you've positioned this whole thing as a newsletter, which is a little unusual, which I like it. I think it's great, actually.
It's interesting. There's a whole cottage industry of niche media newsletters that are popping up right now. There are a bunch of paid newsletters, but I am part of this. I'm really active in kind of the voice technology, voice community. I'm also starting to sort of build more of a network of peers in the like cottage niche media newsletter industry. These are kind of newsletters that have 25 to like 100,000 subscribers, and that are monetizing via advertising and sponsored posts and things. So I
Well,
think you're going to start to see more, Erik.
I like it. I think I'm going to be starting one of these too. So I won't compete with Alexa and you and Voice Brew, but
Okay.
well, this has been like really, really interesting. I've definitely personally taken a lot of like to-dos away from this and a lot of ideas. Um, I'm guessing the best way to get in touch with you is at Voice Brew, or is there some other way that people could reach out to you if they want?
Yes, please go to voicebrew.com. That's voice, BREW.com, and sign up for the newsletter. And I, can't wait to see you sign up.
You know what? I love the simplicity of the call to action. Like for everyone's information, before we started to go live, I was like, Catherine, like, what are your calls to action? What do you offer? There's only one. Go to voicebrew.com and sign up. I'm like, okay, well, like, what else? No, that's it. Like, go to voicebrew.com and sign up. So on point. I love it. All right. Well, thanks so much, Catherine. I really appreciate your time. And I think everyone got a lot of good information out of this. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Erik. This was a lot of fun.
You got it.